Alright, so in this video I want to go over all of the character Bop It games that have been released since 2015 up until 2023. Also, by the way, ignore that noise in the background. There's a lot of construction going on, which is why I'm going to intentionally at least try to make myself louder than all that construction going on outside. But anyway, I think in a prior video, I honestly can't remember, I said I wouldn't go over all of these. You can't see them because they're off camera right now. All of the character Bop It games, for whatever dumb reason that I myself actually can't remember. But the point is, in this video, we're going to be covering each and every one of them in chronological order of release. Starting with R2-D2. Before I actually start talking about these in general, I should probably point out, for anyone wondering, these are the 3-input layout, not the extreme layout. You know, like the extreme has flick it and spin it. These only have bob, twist, and pull, which makes sense because, you know, want to keep it as simplified as possible for anyone who's getting to Bob It for the very first time. I think I mentioned that before when I made that, you know, Beginner's Guide to Bob It video that I made, what was that, 2 years ago? But after the success of the Bop It Micro series in 2014, which, by the way, for anyone wondering, it's like that one's in my drawer over there. If I had to guess, Hasbro, it wasn't Dan Klitzner, because Dan Klitzner doesn't have that much control. Like, he doesn't have control in general over what happened to the Bop It IP that much anymore, but Hasbro saw potential in milking the crap out of the Bop It Micro series and basically decided, if I had to wager a guess, it kind of happened like this. Oh, let's do the exact same thing more than once, more than twice, with popular characters, basically. Starting with R2-D2, as I mentioned earlier. As a side note, there are a lot of Star Wars themed Bop It units. The most recent Bop It character Bop It in general, you can't see him, but he's over there, was Darth Vader. He's the most recent one, like I said. But yeah, actually, no, I should probably explain the layout before I do a demonstration of these, huh? But you actually do. Well, you can hold it either way. You can hold it either this way, or I myself prefer to hold it this way. I'm not saying, you know, like, if you're holding it this way, it's wrong. I'm saying, like, you know, I just became accustomed to holding it this way. But anyway, the main point that I'm trying to make here, Bop It and Twist It are right here. There's an actual Bop It button. Not sure if the seams are showing up on camera. Twist It is right here, the lower part of the head, and Pull It are the legs. Interesting how they move simultaneously. Yeah, okay, I can pull one and both move simultaneously. It's kind of interesting. But I'm blasting, so you know it's also above all the construction going on outside.
Blasting. High score 88. Bop it. Twist it. Pull it. Bop it. Your circuit must be malfunctioning. Score 3.
And by the way, that is in fact Anthony Daniels reprising his role as C-3PO.
Wait to start.
Wait for it to turn off before I continue the conversation.
I'll just switch off for a while.
Yes, that is in fact Anthony Daniels. That's not an imitator. They were that dedicated to having the voice be as authentic as possible. I guess I might as well wrap this segment out by saying that if you're a Star Wars fan, I recommend this. If you're a fan of Bop It, I recommend this. But the actual main problem that a lot of people might have with the character Bop It units, especially like say someone plays one of the original layout Bop It units, like for example, Bop It New Moves, like that's a traditionally shaped Bop It unit. Well, in the modern era, at least. Back. And then they jump automatically to one of these. They would most likely be really confused as to, like, where are the Bopjects? Like, there's no, like, you can't see any words that tell you where everything is, for instance. That's actually why I will be explaining where everything is, the layout for all of these individually. Next up, in 2016, we got BB-8. BB-8 is interesting in the fact that there are actually 2 versions of the game. There's the 1.0. I think mine's a 2.0. I can't remember because I haven't messed with this one in a while. But another interesting thing, and I can't really remember as to why, but when you get your Bop It BB-8 for the first time, specifically if it's brand new, it'll come with this in the box. It's not the actual battery door, by the way. Like, you can see that that's its own separate entity. You just clip that on and twist it to lock it into place. It's not the only Bop It to do this. You still can't see it, but the Spider-Man Bop It over there did the exact same thing. This is more or less, it's literally a repeat of the R2-D2 Bop It, complete with C-3PO's voice.
Bop It to start.
Again, pardon the construction going on outside.
Bop It to start. I'll just switch off for a while.
The actual difference is in the layout. Instead of Bop It and Twist It being located where the head is, no, Bop It is right here on its belly, and Twist It and Pull It are right here. Actually, no, it's another interesting thing that I kind of forgot to point out. Well, I haven't used these things in a long time, huh? Is that if you twist it, you can't pull it, and vice versa. I think that's a really smart and cool idea. I will do a little bit of gameplay, like I said I would do for all of these.
Quiet, loud, blasting.
Oh, I thought it was on loud for some dumb reason.
Bop It. Twist it. Pull it. Pull it. Bop It. Bop It. Bop It. Twist it. Twist it. Pull it. Twist it. Bop It. Bop It. I have a bad feeling about this. Score 12.
So yeah, it can more or less be handled
Start.
quite literally. Actually, hold on, wait for it to turn off.
I'll just switch off for a while.
It's more or less something that can be quite literally handled the same way. Like, you can either hold it this way or that way. Again, depending on your preference. Next up in 2017, we got the Bop It Minion Stuart. Bop is right here. It's interesting because there's no way to actually tell normally because you can't see any seams or any indication as to the fact that there would be a button up there in general, which is pretty clever. It's a nice way to hide it. Twist is right here, and pull is right here. I forget her name, probably because I've never seen any of the Despicable Me or Minions movies. But that is in fact the voice actress who voiced Agnes. It's not an imitator. But yeah, like I said, the layout is bop, twist, and pull. Before I play this one, I want to show you guys one of my favorite little details. Alright, so you know how a lot of them say quiet, loud, and blasting, like all the modern Bop Its in general will say that, but here's my favorite part.
Super loud!
It's adorable! But anyway, on to the actual gameplay. Pretty much the same thing can be said, you know, like, you can hold it either this way or that way. I feel like I'm kind of repeating myself, but what with these, like, literally being repeats of each other, they just, like, decide to make different characters into Bop It units. It's not really me being lazy so much as it's, well, Hasbro being lazy, if anything, so you can't really blame me for that. Next up, I think around the exact same time in 2017 or 2018, I think it might have been 2018, pardon me, because I kind of have a hard time remembering all these bits of information. We got one based off of Baby Groot from Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, and from my understanding, at least as of this recording, I still can't remember if this is accurate because this is actually the rarest of the character Bop It games. This was actually hard for me specifically to get a hold of. Got mine secondhand, brand new via eBay. But because of how much taller even Baby Groot actually is as a character, they had to restructure things slightly. Pull It is still the legs, much like R2-D2 was, and they still do move simultaneously. And both Bop and Twist are up here. Bop it's still an actual button, but it's kind of hard to tell because of this little bit right here. Like, it's hard to tell, like, if it's actually going to register properly, if that makes sense. And Twist is the head as well.
I am Groot. Bop It to start.
That is not Bradley Cooper. I can tell you that right now. That is not Bradley Cooper. That was just like... I think it was like some staffer or whatever from Hasbro because they couldn't like actually afford Bradley Cooper for whatever dumb reason.
Why don't you just rest for a bit? I am Groot. Bop It to start.
These, like, and I say these because there's another one that is structured like this one as well in terms of the actual design, but this is one of the few that I actually hold like this by default. But the reason why I hold it this way, it's because Baby Groot is a lot taller than R2-D2. So I almost always explicitly hold him like this because it's easy for me to reach every single Bopject. Make sure my laptop doesn't power down while I'm recording video. And speaking of, next up was Chewbacca, who is, like I said, this is the one that I was kind of alluding to, pretty much structured like the exact same way. Like, he stands up and is molded a very similar way. I'm not like big on Star Wars, so I don't know if that's like an imitator voicing Han Solo. I wouldn't know because I'm not very familiar with the Star Wars franchise, so pardon me.
I score 100. Bop it. Twist it. Pull it. Pull it. Bop it. Bop it. Twist it. Bop it. Twist it. Pull it. Twist it. Twist it. Twist it. Bop it. Bop it. Pull it. Bop it. Come on, Chewie, don't let me down. Score 16.
One thing that is, at least from
Bop it to start.
from an experience or maybe opinion perspective,
Maybe we should give it a rest, eh, Chewie?
is I really like how much more clickier the Twisted Bopject is specifically. I don't know why. I am really sorry once again that I'm kind of glazing over these, but hey, they're pretty much interchangeable, so you can't really blame me once again. Alright, let's get the difficult one out of the way, because with this one there's actually a lot more to talk about rather than just like me glazing over the rest of them like I did earlier, and I will do later on for obvious reasons. Because, you know, again, they're more or less the same. But this one, there's actually something that kind of needs to be addressed. A lot of the people who are in the electronics / Bop It gaming community already know this story. But I'm saying it for people who don't know the history of this one. Alright, so when Bop It Olaf came out, it was not well received, and there is a very obvious reason for that. It's kind of, well, okay, there's no way to get around this, but it's kind of, well, perverted. I don't really know who at Hasbro thought that these voice lines were okay, and like the inflections definitely do not help matters. Making matters even worse is that Dan Klitzner himself has openly stated that he did not enjoy working on this one in the slightest. And, like, aside from the corporate stuff, like how how I mentioned at the beginning of the video, he has pretty much next to no control over his Bop It IP anymore. Like, not just that, but like, when the actual inventor of Bop It has stated that he didn't enjoy working on a Bop It game, yeah, that's really telling. Although, to be fair, it's not the only time this has happened, but it's arguably the worst one. Like, it's where I feel really, really sad for him. But anyway, Bop It Olaf. Bop It Olaf, its layout is kind of interesting. Mainly because of the pose he's in. So Bop is down here, Twist is right here, and Pull is right here. Like, it's a very, it's kind of a rearranged layout of what BB-8 had. It's just, like, slightly restructured. I can get BB-8 to stand back up. It's hard to get it to stand up properly because BB-8 is a round character. But anyway, I'm not even going to bother scoring, like, 5 points or whatever on this one. I'm just going to get it done over with.
I score 3. Bop it. Twist it. Pull it. Twist it. That was an absolute mess. Come here.
Yeah, that's one of the examples of the perverted nature of this Bop It unit that I'm talking about specifically.
Bop it to start.
If you want more details about why it's... Turn off.
Oh, man, am I out of shape? Want to take a break?
As to why the voice clips are, let's just say, once again, perverted. I did actually make an entire playlist archiving all of the test modes for each and every one of the, well, until I got Darth Vader. I still have to do Darth Vader at some point. Test modes for all the character Bop Its. Olaf is obviously the one that I really wasn't interested in doing the test mode video for because, well, I already just mentioned why. Next up, and he was briefly a Walmart exclusive for some reason, we got Grogu. This was actually during the time before Grogu was actually given the name Grogu, so they just decided to market it as the child. But I'm assuming because of how popular The Mandalorian was at the time, I think it's still like an ongoing thing, right? Somebody please correct me once again in the comments, because I'm not like a huge Star Wars fan, and no, not in the context of, I don't care, it's just like I don't know anything about Star Wars, but anyway, he was originally, for some weird reason, kind of a Walmart exclusive, like I mentioned earlier. But Grogu has since become more widespread. I believe he's still in print. Actually, yes, he is, because when I got both Vader and a replacement Bop It Spider-Man, I actually saw him. I saw Grogu in the store. Huh. But anyway, this is actually one of the ones I actually have a hard time physically playing because Grogu's ears are very wide. They kind of get in the way. But I am thankfully able to work around that because while Bop and Twist are right here, again, like, his ears being wide don't pose that much of a problem. And yes, Pull is right here, if that wasn't obvious enough already. But we're back to, actually, we were kind of back to that with, well, the last one that we were back to doing that was with Olaf, but no one cares about Olaf because Olaf is controversial and perverted, but moving on. Back to the whole actually having the real actor / voice actor reprise their role as the character. In this case, I don't know his name because I've never actually watched The Mandalorian.
Bop it to start.
We have The Mandalorian, the guy that plays the Mandalorian in the series, reprise his role.
Bop it to start. Quiet, loud, blasting.
Also, I don't know if this was intentional or not, but like, yeah, despite the fact that... Just wait for it to turn off before I start talking again.
Let's give it a rest.
Despite the fact that Bop It is like something that gets a lot more nerve-wracking and very stressful as time goes on, I don't know if it was intentional or not, but this is actually one of the more relaxing iterations of Bop It, probably because of The Mandalorian. Like, I don't know if this is intentional or not either, but he's like basically whispering everything. Like, it's kind of one of the most easiest versions of Bop It in that regard, at least from my experience. Please tell me it's not just me who notices that. But yeah, while the guy who played / voiced the Mandalorian did reprise his role, they just decided to, well, straight up just use stock baby sound effects like stock giggles and whatever for Grogu. Like, that's fine. I can't get mad about that too much or at all. Like, we're talking about a Bop It. I'm not gonna, like, get mad about a Bop It game. Like, come on. But anyway.
Bop it to start. High score 3. Bop it. Twist it. Pull it. Pull it. Twist it. Bop it. Bop it. Pull it. Twist it. Twist it. Oh no. Score 9.
Oh, no. Wait for it to go to sleep.
Bop it to start. Hey, let's give it a rest.
Now we're moving on to arguably one of my favorite Bop It games. Yes, that is in spite of the corporate nonsense that goes on behind the scenes with Hasbro and the way they treat Dan Klitzer and their creators in general. But, like, ignoring that context, I can still, like, enjoy Bop It Spider-Man. I mentioned this with Bop It BB-8 and how I said I'd get back to this later, but it's pretty much the exact same thing. I still don't know why they decided to do that. It's not something that I'm upset about or whatever. It's just like something that kind of confused me, if that makes sense. But there is actually something interesting to talk about with this one. Unlike Olaf, though, this is actually a positive and, well, actually interesting thing to talk about. The art style they took, the art direction they took for this one seems to be, it's a very chibi style. For those who don't know, the chibi art style is when the character's head is a lot bigger than the rest of their body. It's a very common art style in Japan, in Japanese culture. You've probably seen it a few times for example, specifically Funko Pop figures are a very common example of figures or whatever that use this kind of art style. But anyway, the Bopject layout and just the general, well, design of where the Bopjects were located really fascinated me because, like, I didn't expect that this would be the route that they would take, but Bop It is once again on the head, although Twist It is his legs for some reason, and I have to point this out too. With the pose that he's in, with his hand on the ground, that prevents the legs from snapping off, which is a really great idea. And pull is the web coming out of his hand. Now, for those of you who saw my older video covering the Bop It Spider-Man, you may be noticing this. It's not, the web isn't sticking out. Like my old one, which I actually replaced it. This one, the web does not stick out anymore, which is awesome. Also, not really like a nitpick or a complaint, just something that kind of surprised me, is that the web coming out of his hand is like a translucent blue as opposed to like a translucent or transparent white. I can't really recall any other instances in which the web that Spider-Man shoots out of his hand was colored blue. I might be misremembering something, but that's just me.
My spidey sense is tingling. Bop it to start.
I don't know who that is who is voicing the Bop It Spider-Man. I really don't know. But anyway, let's play a little bit of the actual game.
High score 100.
Beat this one recently.
Bop it. Twist it.
Oh,
made a wrong turn.
Hold on.
Score 1. High score 100.
Having a hard time registering for some reason.
Bop it. Twist it. Pull it. Twist it. Twist it. Bop it. Pull it. Pull it. Hey, you win some, you lose some. Score 7.
He's just so positive even when you lose the game. I don't know why I just like that
Bop it
aspect.
to start.
Probably because, that's kind of Peter Parker's character.
Need a break? I'll stick around.
It's funny because that works as a intentional or unintentional pun. Like, I'll stick around, because he's Spider-Man. But I actually wanted to point this out. This is actually important. I feel like this is one of the most difficult character Bop It games, probably because of, at least from my experience, the way I hold it, I tend to hold it like this. I have to reach all the way over here to pull it. I don't know why, I just find it really difficult. And heck, even then, if I decide to play it like this, sure, you could argue that I could just, pull it like that, but, I don't know, me holding the character Bop It's like this, it's kind of just something that came naturally. And we are up to speed with the Bop It Darth Vader edition. While not a chibi art direction for this depiction of the character, it's definitely a cartoonish exaggeration of the proportions of the character. You can definitely tell just by looking at it. And really awesome move making the cape actually made of like this leathery, maybe fabric-y material. That was a really awesome move, but that's not even one of my favorite things about this particular iteration of Bop It. So Bop is, once again, right here on the head, but twist it and pull it. They could have easily just, done, once again, what Baby Groot and Chewbacca did, have pull it be the legs, but no. Pull it's his hand, which is very interesting. And for twist it is his hand that's holding his lightsaber. Although you can't twist it in this direction, which I also thought was a really awesome and clever idea because once again you want it to snap off. Just a little nitpick, but like it would have been really awesome if when you twisted it, the saber actually lit up. But again, maybe I'm nitpicking too much.
Know the power of the dark side. Bop it to start.
Alright. Let's do it.
High score 100. Bop it. Twist it. Pull it. Bop it. Bop it. Twist it. Twist it. Bop it. Pull it. Twist it. Know the power of the dark side. Score 9.
That is, I think that's the same guy who actually played Emperor Palpatine in the live-action
Bop it
movies,
to start.
reprising his role.
Well learned much, young one.
But yeah, like, despite the fact that, much like every other character Bop It ever, big surprise coming from me holding it like this, it's actually not that difficult. Like, heck, despite the fact that we're talking about... Actually, no, I was going to say twist instead of pull it. Why would I say that? Despite the fact that pull it is still over here, because he's got his hand, like, upright like this, it's a lot easier to access than, once again, Spidey. I don't know if it's going to do this, but the startup voice clip can actually be different. Let me see if it does it.
The force is strong this one. Bop it to start. Bop it to start. Well learned much, young one.
And then there should be... Hopefully it actually does. It's kind of randomly generated which one it decides to play, but... Let's see. Yes, there it is. No! I'm pretty sure it's a direct reference to the fact that clip from, what was it, the first movie? Became a meme. But that's like the funniest detail and my favorite detail. Well, not my absolute favorite, but one of my favorite details. Another favorite detail of mine would be like... It's a lot more noticeable if it says Bop It more than once, but like it'll play like Darth Vader's traditional breathing sound effect, but it won't do the same one each and every time, which is it's a little but very noticeable detail that I'd imagine specifically hardcore Star Wars fans will care about and notice. But yeah. Put him back next to Spidey. I guess the question that people might have is which one do I recommend? And, like, aside from, not applicable over there, I do recommend all of these, but which one would I recommend the most? I'd say that's kind of up to your personal preference, maybe up to which character you like the most. But being, like, actually real with this one, you might be kind of surprised. But I actually say either R2-D2, BB-8, Minion Stuart, or Chewbacca. And then I'd say, like, after you master those, then move on to either Spidey or Vader. But once again, after you've mastered those over there. After you become more familiar with Bop It in general. So yeah. Hopefully that video covered pretty much every single character Bop It ever released. This video will most likely become obsolete at some point in the future because what with, all the character Bop Its that have come out, it's pretty obvious that Hasbro is most likely going to make another one at some point, like either later this year or next year. If that happens, which character they decide to turn into a Bop It unit, we don't know yet. So, yeah. Hopefully this video helped clear things up and, hopefully I elaborate on all of the character Bop Its in great detail enough for all of you. And with that being said, this is Sir Bop-A-Lot, signing out.